I was a teacher today. Welcome to the SEC.
You're watching Inside SEC Basketball Live with Curtis Wilkerson on Inside Arkansas.
Welcome in to Inside SEC Basketball Live. Curtis Wilkerson and Andrew Ellis here with you on this fine Monday in SEC country. A lot to get to after another wild and I would say somewhat telling week of SEC basketball where I think the top of the totem pole is starting to become somewhat established, and then there's about a dozen teams that I think are very much bipolar at this time. Tarzan one week, Jane the next, Jekyll and Hyde, whatever you want to call it with this conference. It's going to be a wacky finish to what's already been a pretty entertaining season so far. We'll get into all that in a minute, but first, Andrew, my friend, how are you doing? Are you able to make more sense out of your own life than you are this SEC basketball season? I hope so.
I am able to make a little bit more sense out of my own life, and I am, able to make sense of my disappointment for the Arkansas Razorbacks coming off of their performance Saturday. But I think it just speaks to the overall feel of this league where there's a lot of parity, a lot of teams that aren't separated by a ton, a lot of teams that you can't really count on game to game, which makes it fun. And I'm excited to talk about it, man. It's been a journey trying to figure out these teams and where they go, but I think we have a better idea. But we agree the separation is just really not that much for a lot of these guys.
Yeah, it's really interesting, man, because we're about to be, after the midweeks here, we'll be a third of the way through conference play. So, I mean, you're over halfway through the actual season and almost a third of the way through conference play. You feel like you start to figure out who these teams are and what this pecking order is going to look like. I do think this is it's about as wide open as it gets. Here's some fun facts for you real quick, Andrew. There are no unbeatens left in the SEC at this stage. Most people know that by now. There are no winless teams. Shout out to LSU for getting on the win column there. Arkansas, Florida, and Missouri, the only three SEC teams who have not lost at least once on their home floor already at this stage of the season. Tennessee and Auburn are the only SEC teams who don't have a true road win yet this season. We could start at the top, Andrew, with Florida's loss at Missouri and work our way all the way down to the bottom with LSU's, getting blown out at home by South Carolina. Every team in this league has at least one, what the heck just happened type of result. At least one. Some teams have more than that. This is about as wide open as I can remember. It's shaping up to be a really fun race, although I think when we'll get into it in a second, there's one team that seems to be separating at the top. The cream is rising, if you will.
Yeah, not too much of a mystery. I think everyone can kind of figure out who's going to be number one in our power rankings. But yeah, I the way I look at it, Curtis, is I feel like every SEC team gets a mulligan. Even the team that is going to lead our power rankings, they got their mulligan out of the way in their first SEC game. Arkansas, to be clear, their mulligan was Auburn. The Georgia game, we can't give you a pass because we already gave you a pass last week. But yeah, every team has a game that you just have to look at and say, what happened there? And I think, Vanderbilt got theirs out of the way this week, but I've been trying to kind of look at teams through that lens because when you have the sample size so small, you can't let one result dictate too much, but you evaluate it all, and it's very interesting. Some of these I'm kind of glad that they happened. Like Vanderbilt, I'm glad they went out there and lost to Texas just to kind of show that we're all in the same boat together.
Yeah, no kidding, man. Well, let's start at the top here, and tell me let me just ask you this: if we're talking about the SEC title race, Andrew, and we're 5 games into this thing, would you take Florida or the field to win the SEC regular season crown? Because listen, they started with that loss in Missouri. We just mentioned it. That was their what the heck. But since then, they've looked really, really impressive. As a team who, when we got into SEC play, we were looking at them going, these don't look like the reigning champs to me. They got a lot of warts here. What's going on with that backcourt? Seems like they figured some things out. Is it just a product of, hey, they're playing hot right now, but maybe they're closer to that team we saw earlier in the year? Or have they really emerged as the class of this league?
I would take them over the field, mostly because, you just look at the standings. The only team tied with them is Texas A&M, and I think we all kind of agree A&M, while they're better than we thought they were going to be, they're not going to go 15-3. They're not going to really be up there for winning the entire league, I wouldn't imagine. So I look at Florida, and I think what they're doing is a lot more sustainable. And then with their size, with that front court, it just gives them a very high floor. And so while all these teams have some variance, and we've seen that with Florida, that loss against Missouri just continues to look weirder and weirder. I think Florida's not going to have as much up and down. Even in their losses this year, they've been in a lot of close games. They played Arizona to as close a game as anybody's played Arizona. You know what I mean? So it's like clearly they don't have a ton of stains on their resume necessarily. Just in non-conference, they couldn't quite get over that hump and win those close games. They've been beating teams. I mean, they won a close game against Vanderbilt, but they've been putting some belts of ass on some of these teams where they don't even need to win a close game. I think their front court, their size, just gives them a little bit more stability. So I would take them over the field. But I do think, teams like Bama, maybe even a team like Arkansas are going to still be heard from in this discussion at some point.
Yeah, I think so too. With Florida, it's interesting because they've graduated from both of their guards stinking, and they've still got some questions that front and that backcourt too. They're getting one of those dudes playing pretty well every night. It was haircut Boogie in the midweek, and then it was Xavier Lee, who played a lot better over the weekend. At some point, they'll have both of those guys rolling in a game or two, and I'm sure there are going to be some where neither one of them are playing particularly well, and then they're vulnerable. But to your point, like with that front court that they have, and it's not just at the 4 and 5, man, but when you can play a Tommy Houck at the 3 and he's competent out there on both ends of the floor. You got 3 dudes there who are 6'10" or taller that are very skilled. Ruben Chinyelu, who, if it's not Somto, it might be him as the SEC Defensive Player of the Year. All of a sudden, he's an offensive force in there, and he's averaging like 18 points a game over the last several. They look really good right now. It's been kind of impressive to see them figure it out in real time there. But you mentioned, I'm going to pull up the league standings here. That way we can provide a little bit of context as we talk about some of these teams. But Florida up there at the top at 4-1, and they had a good week. You mentioned, they went and just handled business on the road against Oklahoma, just popped those dudes. And then they went on the road and played a Vanderbilt team that was highly motivated. Memorial was rocking in there. It looked like a really cool atmosphere, and they won that game in a dogfight. That was impressive. But then there's Texas A&M, man, still a week later at 4-1. And I ask you, as we kind of shift the conversation a little bit, are we talking about a contender or a pretender here? And I'm not necessarily saying to win the league title, but are we going to be looking up, for Nashville, and all of a sudden Texas A&M is one of these teams in the top 4 that gets a double bye? They're 4-1. They took their first loss, but that was an overtime game in Knoxville against Tennessee. Like, they pushed them to the brink over there at Thompson Bowling, and then they turn around, they pop a Texas team that was as hot as anybody in the league in a true road game. You know how I feel about the Moody Center, but they still went over there and got it done. I got to give them credit where credit's due.
Yeah, a little bit of a weird week here where, like, you go on the road and you pretty much should have beat Tennessee, which would have been, if they had beat Tennessee and they're 5-0, all of a sudden this is a completely different conversation. And then that Tennessee turns around and loses to Kentucky, and so now I'm like, man, is that Tennessee win really that good of a win? Because what's going on with the Vols right now? And then you have a win over Texas, which Texas is coming off of some really loud performances. But I wouldn't say it's necessarily like a stunning performance, like a really can't miss performance from A&M, but they're taking care of business. They're close in all these games. All 5 of their SEC games, they've either won or had a very real chance to win. I think it reminds me, I'm going to make a baseball reference here. Surprise. It's like when a hitter is like hitting 375 and you're like, oh, is this real? It's like, well, yeah, he's not going to hit 375 for the year, but he could afford to come back down to earth and still hit 320, which is probably better than you thought he was going to hit. That's where I'm at with A&M. A pretender sounds like a knock. Sounds like I'm saying I don't believe in them. I think they've established themselves at this point as a real NCAA tournament level team, like a team that really could make the big dance. But I don't buy them as a real threat to beat Florida for the SEC regular season title just yet.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think they're going to be a contender for the league crown. I wouldn't rule them out for that top 4 double bye in Nashville.
No, certainly not.
And here's why, Andrew, because they've been surprising some people. I think they're going to come back down to earth at some point. I think their lack of size and rebounding is going to catch up to them, and they can make up for that with some of the Bucky ball. They're kind of designed to play that way, but they've done what they've done so far. They're at 4-1. Now they've got a 2-game homestand coming up, Andrew, and they play Mississippi State and then South Carolina this week. No reason for them not to be 6-1 and right up there at the top of the standing still. And we have this same discussion a week from now, and then you're nearly halfway into the league schedule. So it's kind of crazy how it's shaping up for them so far. They got some tough games on the back half of the slate, but yeah, I mean, they might be at 6-1, and then they'll probably be ranked in the top 25 and everything else when we get to this point next week, unless they slip on the banana peel. And honestly, with the way this league has gone so far this season, nothing would surprise me.
Yeah, I mean, if they end up being 6-1, which they will be favored to be, then you look at it. I mean, do we agree that 10 SEC wins pretty much clinches you in the NCAA tournament? Like,
Yeah,
if you go 10-8, you're there. So then you look at it and you're like, they could go 4-9 down the stretch. And so you look at some of those tough games on the schedule, but it's like they could afford to lose a lot of them if they are able to just kind of take care of business. As long as A&M doesn't, like you said, slip on the banana peel and lose to bad teams here, I mean, they've put themselves in a very good spot. And so that's interesting. But I also think, like, I just kind of have to right now they're winning. You just have to smile and nod, even if you don't really believe in them.
Yeah.
But definitely got to give Bucky Barnes a lot of credit. I mean, he certainly got them way ahead of schedule than we expected. And they at least seem to have some type of legitimate culture and identity that they can build upon for the future.
Yeah, and you can't say that for a lot of teams in the league here. So let's shift gears. If you look here in the standings, just this cluster of teams that are at 3-2, a game off of pace, but you've got Ole Miss and Vanderbilt and Georgia and Alabama and Arkansas and Missouri and Kentucky. It's ridiculous. All these teams there at 3-2. So we're both gonna do this. We're gonna make the case here. The first thing I want to do from this group of teams that are 3-2 right now, make the case for me, Andrew, for the team that you think is most likely to separate from the pack. Some of these teams are going to be in their top 2 or 3 of the SEC when all is said and done. Who do you think is the best bet to emerge from this group and be in that conversation at the end?
So Alabama's not playing great basketball right now. Like, they're clearly not what they are going to be and what they have been, frankly. I mean, they're a team that coming into league play, you think has as much stability of just consistency, always being among the best in the SEC. I still think they're that team that if one of these teams in that group was going to rattle off 8 or 9 straight wins, I think Bama has that capability. I don't want to overlook Vanderbilt here. Vanderbilt obviously coming off of an 0-2 week. I mean, you lose on the road at Texas, kind of a head scratcher considering the Moody Center. And then you lose to Florida, which I know some people probably look at that and say, all right, that's proof that Vanderbilt's not one of those top teams. That Florida game was very competitive, man. I thought they looked really good in that one. I know you're at home, so it's a little bit easier, but they're still, I mean, Vanderbilt's going to be really tough to beat in Nashville, obviously. But I also still, I believe in their pieces. I think they have a real chance to win a ton of games. So I think they're very much in that mix. Arkansas, I still think, we're going to look back at this Georgia game and be like, that was the one that really kind of eliminated you from that contention. Same for Vanderbilt, where it's like, I don't think they can win the league because they just lost to the team that's going to win the league. They lose the tiebreaker, all that. I don't think Arkansas is going to make a run and win the league, but I think them and Vanderbilt very much still have a really high ceiling and on any given night can beat anyone. But I think Alabama is certainly the team that is probably the safest bet to emerge from this group of 3-2 teams. I don't mean to be completely dismissive of Ole Miss, but color me very skeptical that Ole Miss's recent turnaround is something that's going to launch them into really being a top team in the league.
Sure. Well, hold that thought actually for just a second. And I think I'm with you. We're on the same wavelength here. If I had to take my, top 4 seeds going into the SEC tournament, predict that right now, I would probably still go Florida, Alabama, Vanderbilt, Arkansas, I think is where I would wind up going here. For all the reasons you laid out with Alabama, I'm with you on that one. I am bullish on this Vanderbilt team. I will say, and we'll do our pick'ems here in a little bit. Vanderbilt traveling to Arkansas. That game is Tuesday night in Fayetteville, and I feel infinitely better about the winner of that game as being right in there in that conversation with Alabama for emerging from this pack. Doesn't mean I'm ruling out the team that loses, but the path becomes a lot easier because this is one of the more difficult games left on the schedule for both teams. But yeah, and to expand on Arkansas a little bit, they've looked like such a buzzsaw at home. I mean, they popped Louisville in there. They popped Tennessee in there. We mentioned earlier, they're one of 2 or 3 teams in the conference that hasn't lost on their home floor just yet this season. And so all they really got to do is hold serve from that standpoint. The question with Arkansas is, how are they going to play on the road? Are they going to be able to find some consistency there? On one hand, you're like, well, they got to go to Florida. That's not going to be fun. They got to go to Alabama. That's not going to be a lot of fun either. But they've got some games that are manageable on the road beyond that. You look at the bottom of the standings there. They go to Oklahoma. They go to LSU. They play at Mississippi State. If you go pick some of those games off there and maybe you lose the ones that you're supposed to lose on the road, you look up at the end and Arkansas is pushing 13-5 or something as long as they continue to play so well at Bud Walton Arena. So they've certainly got to figure some things out there on the defensive end of the floor. Vanderbilt's got to figure some things out when it comes to their size discrepancy and rebounding. And Alabama, they got to get healthy, man. It seems like they've got a different lineup in there every game. All these teams are a little bit flawed, but I think our pecking order is pretty similar in terms of who we think has the most staying power. Now, the flip side, and I hope that you did hold that thought, out of this group of 3-2 teams, who would you say is the most likely to miss the NCAA tournament? Because you're a game off of pace right now. Somebody's going to fall off of the cliff here, and they're going to be left, standing looking crazy on Selection Sunday.
So this is the part of the show where I give Mike White his flowers, and I give Georgia their credit. One, I mean, just a really good performance against Arkansas. You're at home. You needed it because you're just coming off of a pretty embarrassing loss at home against Ole Miss that, you talk about those WTF results. Mm-hmm. Georgia at home against Ole Miss would definitely qualify as that. But I feel like that win against Arkansas not only gives Georgia I would say a signature win, like a real one that they can build off of and say, hey, this is one you can point to prove that we're a good team. So it's going to help them from a resume standpoint. But I think it kind of clinched that this is not a Georgia team that's just going to fade into oblivion. I mean, hell, they made the NCAA tournament last year after, really falling apart down the stretch a little bit. So frankly, I think they're kind of in that range where even if they do fall apart, they've done enough work to this point to where they'll make it. So I feel pretty comfortable saying Georgia is not going to completely derail themselves and miss the tournament. I think Ole Miss is I can't think of a better candidate to start 3-2 and then miss the tournament than Ole Miss. Now, is it 3 straight wins that we're now looking at with Ole Miss?
3 straight.
3 straight wins. You get a win over Missouri at home, which, in the moment we were kind of surprised because Missouri, we were like, hey, are they legit? Are they not? That one kind of seemed cool in the moment, but now you look at it and you're like, all right, beating Missouri at home isn't anything to write home about. Mm-hmm. Beating Georgia on the road is something to write home about. And so you kind of look at that. But since we're talking about all these WTF results, and I just said that was one of them, is it possible that that game is the outlier? Because you also, by the way, beat Mississippi State on the road, which going into the hump is not an easy feat. But again, it's not like you're beating good teams there, them in Missouri. I think we might look back at that Georgia game and say that was the outlier, not the signal that Ole Miss is really ready to go here. But you look at the schedule. I mean, they get Auburn at home Tuesday. Tomorrow night, you're playing Auburn at home. That is a golden opportunity to buy yourself a little bit more breathing room. Maybe get yourself a little bit closer to being a legit NCAA tournament team. Then you go on the road to Kentucky. Who the hell knows at this point with Kentucky? I'm sure we'll talk about them in a minute. This is a very big week for Ole Miss to just show us who you are. Like right now, we're both, I'd say, pretty skeptical. You beat Auburn, I'll be a little bit less skeptical. You give Kentucky a pretty good game, and maybe you're able to steal one on the road. We know Kentucky might give one up. Ole Miss could come out of this week and they could be 5-2, and I'm like, damn, all right, Chris Beard's really got something. I think it's much more likely, though, you lose to Auburn, you lose to Kentucky. We're back to dismissing you.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. And the thing about Ole Miss is they struggled so much in non-conference play that they don't have anything to hang their hat on aside from what they do in the SEC. So where we say 10-8 get you in the NCAA tournament, it's would probably get Ole Miss in, but man, they took some rough ones and they kind of tanked their resume in non-conference to where that might get them into Dayton. You know what I mean? So their margin of error is so much more thin than some of these other teams. So I think that's probably the best answer there. I'll point out Missouri also. And yeah, I mean, they went and got that one against Florida at home. That's a big win for them. Who else did they beat in league? They beat Auburn. Like Auburn seems like they're kind of Arkansas-ish, where they're really good at home and maybe not so much on the road. But they didn't do anything in their non-conference. They played a really weak non-con schedule, and the games against real competition they played, they got 20-piece by Kansas. They got 40-balled by Illinois. So they don't have much on that non-conference resume either. And it also doesn't help their case that they went on the road and they lost to Ole Miss, which we'll see what they're going to wind up being. But then also they went and got popped by LSU. So it's almost like they've negated the big win against Florida that they had. So I think they're going to be very, very bubblish once we get down the stretch of the season. We touched on both of these teams. And by the way, I agree with you on when your sentiments with Georgia there. But we haven't said much about Kentucky. and we'll do our power rankings in a minute, but like, where do we stand on this Kentucky team? Because they made the comeback and they beat LSU. And I thought, boy, like, good on you for making that happen and getting the miracle shot against the worst team in the league without its point guard. But since then, LSU picked up a win, so they got off the schneid. And I got to tell you, I don't know if it says more about Kentucky or Tennessee, but for them to be down 18 and to rally back in Knoxville and win that game the way that they did, I'm not saying Kentucky has turned their season around, but I did feel like they were very much at risk when it comes to making the NCAA tournament. I think they're trending in a better direction. You know what Kentucky looks like to me? If I'm being honest, they look like they're going to be playing in an 8-9 game. I think that's kind of where this Kentucky team is if they're not going to have Jalen Lowe and probably not going to have Jaden Quaintance.
Well, I think one of the things we've felt about Kentucky for a few weeks now is that as bad as things have been, they still have a pretty high floor, relatively speaking, because they defend pretty well for the most part. They give themselves a chance to win. And yeah, it's happened twice in a row now where you erase a massive second half deficit. Even in the Mississippi State win, they didn't play super well in the first half there either. So it's like, it's now a thing that this Kentucky team plays better in the second half. They, can erase a big deficit or whatever. And I don't know if that's the most sustainable method of victory, but anytime you can do something multiple times, that then kind of becomes part of your identity. We're never out of a game. We can beat anybody. We can never give up. We can, come up and sneak and pull you up by surprise. Like, it now becomes a thing that these guys in this locker room, especially when you rattle off a 3-game win streak, it's hard to do no matter what your schedule is in this conference. And so I think Kentucky, one, they've saved themselves, because if you lose that game in Baton Rouge, all of a sudden you're definitely have some work to do to like make sure you're not going to miss the tournament. Right. And then you're on, very much fraud watch, fire Pope watch, all that. They've avoided that, which is a huge first step. I also think they've given themselves a nice little, because the metrics still kind of like Kentucky for whatever reason. So I think they would have to like really fall apart to miss the tournament, honestly. And I think, again, it just comes back to having an identity, having something you can build on. I don't know if erasing 17-point deficits is what you want your identity to be built on, but I definitely feel better about Kentucky than I have in a long time. And I think they're not in danger of missing the tournament. Whereas you look at Missouri, who's 66th in the net.
Yeah,
that's a danger zone. Ole Miss is 79 in the net, despite being 3-2. They still have work to do. I think Kentucky is sitting a little bit prettier despite having the exact same conference record.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm with you. Let's go through these 2 and 3 teams now real quick. There's 4 of them. Tennessee, Mississippi State, Auburn, and Texas. And we'll do the fraud check here with these teams. Are they fraudulent, or do we feel like they're going to figure it out? Is kind of what I'm looking for as we go through this. Tennessee. Now 2 and 3 in SEC play. They got popped at Arkansas, Bud Walton Arena. No shame in that. They handled their business against Texas, won that game. They get destroyed on the road at Florida. They come back and they need overtime to get past Texas A&M at home. And then just that epic major collapse, man, against Kentucky over the weekend. They sit here at 2 and 3. They're 12 and 6 overall. They just dropped out of the AP top 25. Did you hear Rick Barnes after that Kentucky game, by the way, where he was like, hey, those guys, and he was talking about Zakai Ziegler and Jemai Mashak. He was like, they don't lose that game. They don't lose that. This group does. And he said that he felt like these guys that he has now are more offensively talented than those, but the defense and the killer instinct and everything is just a little bit different. I don't know if I agree about that offensive talent, but where are you at on Tennessee? Because this is hard, man. Regular season Rick is a thing. It truly is. Feels like it's like there's always this high floor with a Tennessee team coached by Rick Barnes, and they've got some really nice pieces, but hell, I'll actually steal your thunder. I'll go first. I think they're frauds. I think they'll still make the NCAA tournament and everything, but where they're at right now in kind of the lower middle of the pack, I wouldn't be stunned if that's where they wind up, because I don't think they've got enough firepower offensively. And they are good defensively, but they're not Tennessee standard good. I think they're going to continue to get popped in a few of these games. They've already shown vulnerability at home. I'm not so sure that the fans are going to get what they are expecting in Knoxville this year.
Well, we were just saying how Kentucky, if they lose that game to LSU, they would all of a sudden then firmly be on missing the tournament watch. Same for Tennessee, where I know A&M is obviously, great. We gave them their flowers. If Tennessee loses that game on in the midweek, it would have been, especially because you would have followed it up with another loss to Kentucky, and you could play the game of would that happen this way, whatever. But I think like that is the type of loss where I'm like, I think Tennessee is closer to being a legitimate miss the tournament fraud than they are to like Florida or Alabama, where when they had their struggles, you're like, oh, this is a really good team that's just not playing well right now. I don't feel that way with Tennessee because I think the ceiling is much lower. And I agree with your assessment that like not really on the same page with Rick Barnes in terms of the offensive talent being there with Tennessee. But one thing I've always felt is that they don't have to have a high ceiling because they're just going to beat the bad teams at home. They'll go on the road and beat they'll steal one here or there. They'll be able to just kind of give themselves a chance in all these games, and they'll do enough to make the tournament, still have a pretty solid seed and all that. I no longer feel that way, especially when you lose at home to Kentucky, who not that Kentucky's bad, but I agree with Barnes in this front that like those past Tennessee teams just don't lose that game. You get up 17, 18 points against a team that's not that great offensively. It's kind of inexcusable to lose that game at home in front of a really good crowd, by the way, too. So I am very much on like fraud watch with Tennessee. What's weird, and I'm sure we're about to shift to Auburn here for a little bit, but I look at Auburn and I think Auburn has the high ceiling and the low floor. I think Tennessee might just be kind of mid.
Yeah. Yep. I think it's exactly where I'm at. And for the record, I do think that they're going to make the NCAA tournament. I think that this looks like a 20-11 type of finish to the regular season to me.
Dude, you know what's crazy? Tennessee's 26 in net and Georgia's 27.
Really?
I can't believe Tennessee's that high.
I can't either. Well, they've got the Houston win in non-conference, and that'll hold you up there for sure. But they've taken some weird loss. They lost to that Syracuse team. They got kind of blown out, and Illinois is pretty good. I don't know. It's something just doesn't feel right. I don't trust this Tennessee team, and I usually, if there's anything I trust, it's Rick Barnes in a regular season game. But a little bit odd. We don't have to spend much time on this one, I don't think. Do we agree that Mississippi State, certainly more fraud than that they're going to be able to figure it out or something in this league? I'm not seeing it personally. They took some gross losses in non-conference play. They were going to need to do some damage in the SEC. And I don't think Mississippi State's going to finish last in the league, but I certainly don't think that they're going to do enough to get to where they want to be on Selection Sunday.
Yeah, you mentioned the non-conference. Like, it didn't help themselves at all there. So there's a team that had a lot of work to do in SEC play, and they're not horrible. They're the type of team that, frankly, you don't want to play in their building. You have Josh Hubbard taking 35 shots. He can get hot and kind of give you a chance to make something happen. They're not completely horrible or completely inept, but I think there's a pretty low ceiling on what they have going on as well. They're better defensively than they were last year, I'd say, but like this is still just nowhere near a Chris Jans defense that like really makes life tough on you for 40 minutes and, oh, you got to watch everything you do. I think without that and without having any real scoring threat outside of Hubbard, honestly, there's really not much for this Mississippi State team. I think they are what they are. I mean, they're 10-8 overall. They're 2-3 in SEC play. They can beat teams, and they will beat some teams in SEC play, but I don't think we're looking at a super dangerous squad here. I am a lot more dismissive of them than I am pretty much all these other 2-3 teams, including the Texas team that they beat in Texas.
Yeah, no kidding, man. What about Auburn? This is one I'm having the most trouble with. I don't want to let you go first. Maybe you can talk me into one direction or the other here. They're 11-7 on the year. That's not a good record for them overall. They played a really, really difficult non-con, and they had some good wins to show for it. They also got pounced on by 30 in a few games, and they're off to a 2-3 start in SEC play. And their wins are, they had that buzzsaw game where they look like a Sweet 16 team, and they put it on Arkansas. And then they really struggled with South Carolina over the weekend. They won that game by 4 points. We just saw South Carolina in person. Maybe Arkansas was having their own buzzsaw game in that one, but boy, South Carolina did not look good. So I was kind of surprised at how close that game was. But so, if you're Auburn, you've got the two disappointing losses, the overtime loss at Georgia, the weird buzzer beater that got, overturned on the review against Texas A&M. And then they follow up probably their best win of the season by going to Missouri and losing by double digits, and it pissed John Calipari off, if you remember that press conference. But I do not know what to make about Auburn. I think it's because of what you said. There's so much variance. Like, it could be the highest ceiling of that bunch. It could be the lowest floor, and they still don't seem to have anything figured out over there from a game-to-game basis in terms of consistency.
So you look at where they're at in terms of the NCAA tournament picture, and they're still on the positive end of it right now. Still in the top 40 of the net, still in the top 40 of the, the Ken Palm, the WAR, the expected batting average, all of that. They're top 40 in all of it. But they also have a little bit of a home road issue where you just see a completely different team at home and on the road, which is not a completely unfamiliar story in college basketball. There's a lot of teams that fit that criteria, but I mean, you even go back to their non-conference. I mean, you lose by 30 to Michigan. No real shame in that, but I mean, that doesn't help you. You lose by 30 to Arizona. No real shame in that, but that doesn't help you. You lose by 30 to Purdue. Again, same kind of story there. You lose to Georgia. You lose by 10 to Missouri in Como. That was really, and especially coming off of their performance against Arkansas, that was their chance to show us that you are a real program that is actually, you've gotten over that whole home road thing, and now you've had this awesome win against Arkansas. Now you're trending in the right direction. They failed that test. I look at some of these road games they have coming up. So one, they're playing at Florida. They have at Ole Miss, at Florida this week. 2 road games for Auburn to kind of show us, hey, we can play good basketball outside of Neville Arena. They ain't beating Florida. I don't see that one. They also go to Tennessee, who by that point might be pretty desperate. That's going to be a tough one. They go to Bud Walton on Valentine's. That's going to be a really tough one. They do get Oklahoma on the road February 24th, and then they finish the season at Bama. A lot of those games you can lose, and they're not shameful losses by any means, but I'm like, are we going to look up at the end of the year and Auburn has maybe one true road win? That's going to be really tough for them, and they are good at home, and they are very dangerous offensively, but I think it's going to be a little bit of a sweating it out in the month of March for Auburn fans. I think they're going to find out on Selection Sunday if they made the tournament.
This could, yeah, man, because this looks like an Auburn team. I didn't realize some of those road tests they have coming up. If you take into account, a loss in the SEC tournament, this could be like a 13-14 loss Auburn team. So it's going to be very, very close for them. Now, they are capable. If they figure it out, they kind of strike me as a team that could get on a heater and pop off like 3 really good wins in a row. Keyshawn Hall goes nuts or whatever, but you can't bank on that. That's fascinating. So, then with Texas, I thought that they looked like one of the worst teams in the league up until about a week ago. And I got to give credit where it's due. They went on the road and beat Alabama. I know Alabama's a little bit shorthanded, but to go beat them there, I thought was really impressive. And to follow that up by not just beating Vanderbilt on your home floor, but handing them their first loss and controlling them the entire game and beating them by 16. Super impressive. Looked like they really starting to figure things out there with Sean Miller. I like some of the pieces that they have. I know you're a big Dalen Swain fan. I like their big man, the 7-footer, Boca Titus, and he's a fun player. But then they turn around, they lose at home to Texas A&M. It's like they could have really established themselves. They took that loss. We've both agreed that Texas A&M is probably better than we gave them credit for. Where are you at on Texas? Like, was that Texas A&M game kind of a reality check that, hey, you still are who we thought you were, or is that a blip on the radar and they're trending in the right direction now?
I don't think it was a blip on the radar. Because you've touched on the Moody Center just is not an imposing home court atmosphere, which I think is going to be a huge deal for Texas. Because if you're going to make your way up into this mix of these top teams in the league, you're going to have to take care of business at home, which they're talented and good enough to do. But I think not having a real home court advantage hurts you. And then, of course, going on the road to beat anybody is really tough. Game to game, man, the pieces are good. They do have that capability to be like a matchup nightmare for a lot of teams. But frankly, Curtis, we've seen a lot of teams in college or in the SEC the last few years that are bad teams that can beat good teams. South Carolina last year. They were the type of team that they're bad, but like you catch them on the wrong night and they can really hurt you. And they hurt Arkansas. I think Texas is that's just what they are. They're a bad team that on the right night, I think they're honestly a little bit of a shinier version of Mississippi State, where I think they're a little bit more talented than Mississippi State and can really put the fear of God in you a little bit. But I just don't think they're going to have the game-to-game consistency and the home court wins to really get themselves into this mix. But certainly not a team that you can just dismiss outright. And honestly, just like all these other teams, you know, we're dismissive right now. We will go ahead and stop being dismissive if you are able to go and beat Kentucky and Rupp. If you're able to beat Georgia at home, it's a very different conversation. But as of right now, I am very much dismissive of Texas. And I think losing to A&M is kind of proof of that. Not that that's a bad loss, but that was your chance to turn the narrative on your team a little bit, and they didn't do it.
Auburn and Texas, both 11-7, both 2-3 as we stand here in league play. Selection Sunday, one team is in, one team is out. What do you got?
I think Auburn. I think Auburn will probably make the tournament, but I'm not super confident about it, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah, I know. It might be more likely that both of them are out. It's crazy. Okay, and just real quick, and then we'll move on here. We'll talk about the bottom feeders of the league right now. South Carolina, LSU, Oklahoma, all 1-4. There's always a snowball's chance in hell, Andrew. So which of these 1-4 teams do you think is most likely to make a run and put themselves in tournament consideration at the end of the year? Or do you think it's just completely off the table for all three of them?
It's not completely off the table. I mean, nothing's really completely off the table. You always have games in front of you, but I definitely think the correct answer here is that none of these teams make the NCAA tournament. Yeah. Am I crazy for thinking it might be LSU? Simply because they still don't have their point guard, which when he first missed that, the SEC opener, I thought he was like going to be back game 2. And then I thought he was going to be back game 3. And then I thought he was going to be back game 4. Is the dude just out for the year?
Well, they keep listing him as doubtful. And then on game day, they put him as out.
Term that you would use if he's not available for this game, but he will be the next game, right?
Exactly.
So it's like, I don't know. I mean, if he comes back, and I mean, he was their best player. He was their leading scorer. I think he averaged like 5 or 6 assists. Like, if he comes back and they did get a much needed win on Saturday, they had to win some game. And it sucks because, listen, if they had finished off what they were on track to do against Kentucky, they're 2-3, and then you're looking at them and saying, man, they're right in that mix with all these other mid teams, and they're about to get their point guard back. They're borderline dangerous, and they actually, they didn't play anybody good, but they actually won a lot of games in non-conference. So they kind of came into conference play feeling good about themselves. We'll see if they turn things around, but I think they might be the best chance for it. Although Oklahoma does get to play Arkansas at home here after 2 road games this week. If Oklahoma can split, they play at South Carolina, at Missouri this week. 2 of the, I'd say closer to the bottom of the SEC. If they can split those games and then beat Arkansas at home, maybe we'll be looking at Oklahoma like, hey, they're not quite dead yet.
Yeah, and South Carolina, I think, is probably the worst team in the league, and it's because we got our own eyes on them. At that Arkansas game, they looked rough for them. It's interesting to me because like LSU and Oklahoma, we're talking about them here. Mac McMahon, Porter Moser. Like if you had to pick 2 SEC coaches with the hottest seats, I think it would be those 2 guys. Hell, LSU's AD already put McMahon on the hot seat. Like you make the tournament, we got to reevaluate some things. That's not what I would want to hear if I was looking for my job security. But yeah, LSU right now they're much higher in the net because they were computer triggers in the non-conference. They played a soft schedule, beat up on some teams, and they got their metrics up there. They've slipped a lot, obviously, in league play, but if you look at it, they're still top 50 in the net. Wow. All of their predictive metrics are in the, in the mid 40s. They got to win some games, but they're not that far off from having a tournament type of resume still. Oklahoma, man, it's so weird because I think they are clearly the most talented group in this bunch here. There's no reason at all to have, Nigel Pack and Tay Davis and some of the guys that they have on this team, and to be at the bottom of the league right now, I think is crazy. But they strike me as the team that could get hot and rattle off enough wins, but they've dug themselves in so deep of a hole. They are not anywhere near that type of resume. So LSU has the best odds. I think Oklahoma has the best team of the group, but I'm with you. I don't think either one of them are going to get in when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I think that's a very good way of putting it. Oklahoma's also just like got a lot of experience on their team. I mean, Nigel Pack's playing 14 years of college basketball. It's like you would think that with some of these seniors, at some point, that fear and that desperation of holy crap, my career is about to end. You never know. I mean, they're on a 4-game losing streak. I think they're the only team in the conference who's lost 4 straight games. I mean, that's a tough one.
Yeah, not easy. Okay, let's get into our power rankings, and we'll do our pick'ems, and we'll get out of here for the day, Andrew. Before I pull this up, the SEC power rankings. Do you have anything you'd like to say? I know you put a lot of thought into this week, and you acted like you felt pretty good about where you were at here.
I feel a lot better than I did the last couple of weeks. I mean, the week one when we did this, I was like really nervous, especially because we had the live chat. I was like, they're about to obliterate me. This is horrible. I don't feel like tremendous. Like I know for a fact I'm right. It's up for discussion. But I think that you and I are pretty close in what I felt better after seeing yours. But yeah, I feel pretty good about what I have. Auburn, I have Auburn a little bit higher than I think probably other people do. But embrace debate. Let's pull them up.
Let's do it. Okay, we'll pull it up here, and we'll both be able to take the floor and justify what we have to say. Listen, I got Florida at number one. There's no debate there at this point. They've handled their business. They've looked great. They've picked off some great wins, including that roadie at Vanderbilt. Now, I understand that Vanderbilt lost 2 games last week. They got beat up on at Texas. That was a war, in Nashville against Florida. They lost that game. I've still got them at number 2 because I was very impressed with them in that game against Florida. Like at some point they were going to get got. Vanderbilt wasn't going to go undefeated. So I put about as much stock into that game at Texas as I do, some of these other results that these teams have had. They've just been kind of weird on the road. Sometimes it's just going to happen in this league. But I actually came away very impressed with them, more encouraged about what they could be the rest of the way than I was, and they lost the game. Texas A&M, listen, I got to give them credit where it's due, man. I moved them up from 12 to 5 last week. I moved them into my top 3 this week. I know they took their first loss, but I thought that Tennessee was going to be the team that exposed them and outed them. And they battled with those dudes and probably should have won that basketball game. And then they turned around and went and won at Texas. So good on them. Georgia, I got at 4. I realized that they lost at home to Ole Miss. And I had them quite a bit lower than this going into the weekend. But they stepped up in a big spot and beat the brakes off of Arkansas. Bama, I put at 5 because they got a couple wins to get the ship back righted. To me, the difference between Alabama, I've got Alabama 5, Kentucky 6, and I dropped Arkansas to 7. Reason being, Alabama, they won 2 games last week, both on the road, and they were down big to Oklahoma. They came back, they finished the job. Kentucky, down big at LSU, came back and finished the job. Down big at Tennessee, came back and got the win. They finished it. And Arkansas got off to an equally poor start at Georgia. They rallied all the way back from 19 down and tied that game, and they let go of the rope, and they lost by 14. So they got to figure some things out on the road before I can take them seriously in the upper echelon of the conference again. Honestly, though, if they beat Vanderbilt and LSU this week, they'll probably be right back up there in my top 5. A lot can change in a week. I think I give credit to Texas more for what they did in those 2 big wins than penalizing them for the stuff against Texas A&M there. And then the rest of the way, it just kind of is what it is. I think 9 through about 12 you could put in any order, and then I think we pretty much are in agreement with who the bottom tier of the league is right now.
Yeah, so if you look at our top 5, it's the same teams just in different orders.
Yeah,
and I think you look at it through whatever lens. I am looking at Bama at number 2. That is a much more of that's how I feel about Bama, more so of what they've done, because frankly, they haven't played good. Like they have definitely not been the second best team to this point. So maybe I'm kind of ruining the purpose of power rankings by not taking them for what they've done.
Do what you want.
But we're getting closer and closer to that point of the season where it's like, let's just put these teams where they're supposed to be. Hand up, I should have Vanderbilt over them since they did quite literally play. They're both 3-2 in the SEC. They played a game and Vanderbilt won. I should give Vanderbilt a nod. And I'm with you that I did not come away from the Florida game thinking Vanderbilt got exposed or they're actually bad now and they're about to – hell, even if they lose to Arkansas, they'll be on a 3-game losing streak. I won't be like, oh, yeah, Vanderbilt, they're coming back to who we knew they were. I still think they're pretty legit. We both have Georgia at 4 there. I have A&M at 5, more so because I think the 2 games they played this week, the road game against Tennessee, which you end up losing at the end, no shame in that, and then a close road win against, I guess it was Texas on Saturday. I don't look at either of those performances and be like, oh, yeah, this is an A&M team that actually is legit. And I think the Tennessee win or loss aged actually worse because of how Tennessee played on Saturday. And so I kind of look at it as like, with Bama and A&M specifically, I have at 5, despite the fact that they're 4-1, and Bama at 2, despite the fact that they haven't been that great. That's more so how I feel about those teams and where I think they're going to finish rather than a what have you done for me lately, which I now realize is kind of ruining the purpose of the power rankings. Whatever. We both have Arkansas and Kentucky 6-7, and we just have them flipped a little bit. I don't feel too strongly about it. I just honestly, Arkansas is probably about to win 2 home games and end up going up in our power rankings no matter what. I also just don't want to freak out too much over Arkansas losing a road game. I think if you look at their results in SEC play, like, I know they were bad performances, but it's like, I don't look at losing at Auburn as like a bad thing. I also don't look at losing at Georgia as a super bad thing. I'm disappointed with how Arkansas fared in specific settings of that game, but I still have Arkansas kind of high just because they don't really have a big stain on their resume other than just the margin of victory. It's not like they've lost to South Carolina or lost to LSU or anything stupid like that. And Kentucky, I'm giving them respect. I've moved them up. I think I had them like 11 last week. I'm giving them respect, but not that much respect. And then Auburn, I guess, is kind of going back to the point of like what I think they are capable of and what I think they are going to be. And I look at Texas's results as a little bit, I guess that's our biggest discrepancy is Texas is I kind of look at their results as you have 2 of the best wins that anyone can have. You win on the road at Bama and beat them, and you beat Vanderbilt. Like, that's as good as it gets. But I kind of look at those and I'm like, I don't quite buy them just yet, especially since they lost to A&M at home. I'm willing to dismiss them. But yeah, I'm with you that not really a ton of separation, especially these teams like Ole Miss is 9 and Missouri is 10. I'm certainly not going to argue with anybody if they're like, I have Missouri 9. It's like, okay, cool. Like, I think those teams are pretty similar to me. And then once you get to the bottom, it's kind of just academic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, second glance, thinking about it more, I think I am a couple spots probably high on Texas. The Texas A&M loss I wasn't really moved by. I forgot that they lost to Mississippi State at home. That's kind of a, that's a stinky one. I'm trying to think, though, who was their other loss to? Never mind. It was at Tennessee. Because I was thinking about those 2 games, and I was like, not that big of a deal. But the one with Mississippi State there at home is kind of an ugly one. That was the game that Hubbard had like 38 points on 32 shots or something ridiculous like that. But at any rate, okay, as we wrap things up here, let's get into our midweek pick ems, Andrew. First game, I think there's only 3 games on Tuesday and then 4 on Wednesday. I think we've reached the point where we're going to start getting some buys mixed in there. Arkansas, I know, isn't until the first week of February, but I think this is the week where some teams start to get a midweek bye here. But first game, LSU at Florida.
This is one of the easiest ones we've had to pick because it's just, Florida's been great at home. They're the best team in the league, playing arguably the worst. I would be very surprised if Florida lost this game. I will leave it at that.
Yeah, me too. I'm going Florida, going convincingly. Oklahoma at South Carolina, a battle of the 1 and 4s.
Give me Oklahoma in this one. This is just pure gut instinct. I was very complimentary of Oklahoma in our first SEC live show, and I immediately regretted it, and I still do. But I think it's just at some point you've got to reach that gut check time. And I know South Carolina played a little bit better Saturday, obviously, than they played Wednesday in Fayetteville. But I feel like if one of these teams were going to actually dig deep and find something within themselves and make it happen, I think it would be Oklahoma. And frankly, like, if you can't win on the road at South Carolina, we now have to dismiss you as a team that is really going to make especially when you're coming off of 4 straight losses. If your 5th straight loss is a loss to South Carolina, you're the worst team in the league. Like, I think that's kind of where we would be at with Oklahoma. So give me the Sooners pulling there. It's only a 1.5 point spread, but a miniature upset.
I appreciate where you're at there. And I think Oklahoma is certainly more talented, and I do think they're the better team. Partially for the sake of being different, I'm going to take South Carolina at home, and they just they are a different team at home. I wouldn't say they're a good team, but they're certainly better at home. And I was impressed with the way that they played at Auburn, but they controlled Georgia for most of that game at South Carolina about a week ago. They wound up losing, but they played them really tight there. I remember last year, when South Carolina was struggling the way that they were, they would go on the road and they were losing by 30, 40 points every game at home, whether it was against Florida or anybody else in there. They were giving them hell. there's just something weird about that venue. And at some point, I kind of stopped trusting Oklahoma. I feel like this might be one of those situations where you had a great showing early in the game against Alabama. That was kind of your opportunity to turn your season around and get back on track. And you blew a big lead and you blew the game at home. Everybody's down on Porter Moser. Now you go on the road. I wonder what the motivation is going to look like for that group. I'm going to take South Carolina to get that one done in a battle of the bottom of the barrel. Vanderbilt at Arkansas. Gut check game for both of these teams. Vanderbilt coming off of an 0-2 week. It's like the first adversity that they've faced this season. Arkansas, obviously a disappointing showing at Georgia. So both of these teams should be highly motivated for a slump buster. This is a huge resume opportunity for both teams here. And I think they both use a little bit of momentum back. Who do you have in this one?
So I don't feel great about this at all. Like as an admitted Razorback fan, my confidence is a little bit shaken, and Arkansas has been very good at home, and I have no reason to believe that they're not going to play well at home. I think Vanderbilt is still dangerous, and like you said, going to be very motivated in this one. And I think that the loss against Florida is not going to deflate them. I think it's going to kind of show them we're right there. We can beat literally anyone in this league. Now we got to go prove it by going into, arguably the toughest environment in the league. I think I'm just going with Arkansas because of the history, because of they're at home, because Arkansas, frankly, should be a little bit embarrassed with how Saturday played out. We'll see what the crowd looks like with the snow, but I go Arkansas in a very high-scoring game. I also think with these two teams, going to be a very up-tempo, lot of points. It's easy to favor the home team in those circumstances. I think if this game were in Nashville, not only would I pick Vanderbilt, I wouldn't even really think about it at all.
Yeah, I agree with that last part for sure. I feel like I should pick Arkansas for all the reasons you laid out there, because they've been great at Bud Walton Arena. They look like a different team. I've got a bad taste in my mouth after that game at Georgia for the Razorbacks. I think it's inexplicable how they can have what happened to them happen at Auburn, where you knew the type of game you're walking into, and you were just dreadfully unprepared, and you just do like, that's not our team, burn the tape thing, and then you turn around and get the exact same spot in a do-over type of game against Georgia, and you do the exact same thing. That's very, very frustrating. Like, have you learned from your mistakes type of deal? I know that they're much better at home, but now what I'm wondering about is where's the resolve and the killer instinct and the playing with desperation for this Arkansas team? Because there's zero doubt in my mind that Vanderbilt's going to have that coming into Bud. And is Arkansas going to have it? I think so. I would hope so, but I don't know. I'm taking Vanderbilt to come in and beat Arkansas in Bud Walton Arena. I'm down on my Hogs right now, man. That one got to me on Saturday. I still think they're very clearly a tournament team. I still think they're going to wind up having a really good season, but I look at Tyler Tanner and Duke Miles in that backcourt for Vanderbilt. I don't see a Razorback that's going to be able to keep those dudes out of the paint. I see a Tyler Nickel, who's one of the most prolific three-point shooters in the country, and I just don't trust Arkansas to find him in transition, to be matched up, to not make the inexplicable decision to just leave him to help and give him a bunch of wide open looks. I just don't know if they're going to be able to defend enough to get this one done. They're going to need the Bud Walton Arena magic, in my opinion, to do it. I'm going with Vanderbilt. Auburn at Ole Miss. Are we reaching like must-win territory for both of these teams here?
Not quite, just because we're so early, where it's like, I just rattled off the road games that Auburn has to play, which are all going to be harder than this for the most part. But like, if they lose this game to Ole Miss, it's like they could make up for it by beating Florida and Gainesville or beating Alabama. You know what I mean? So I'm still not going to go must win, but I do think this is definitely a game that if you're Auburn, you got to dig deep and just be like, man, we haven't beat anyone on the road this year. We got to start somewhere. On the road against Ole Miss, my favorite thing in sports is whenever, you have an issue or something with your team that you're worried about. Like, for example, we're worried about Arkansas's defense. So I love whenever Arkansas, like if Arkansas could play the worst offensive team in the country right now at Bud Walton Arena and they win 108-62, and then we can say, oh, wow, what a great defensive performance from Arkansas. And you get all this confidence. You feel like you've righted your wrong when you really haven't.
Mhm.
I think that's what Auburn has an opportunity to do here, where you go out on the road and beat Ole Miss, who's 3-2 in the SEC. They're coming in on a 3-game win streak. They're feeling pretty good about themselves. On paper, it does kind of look like an impressive victory. We watched Ole Miss play at home last week. Not a super imposing environment, not a super talented roster. Frankly, they don't even have a coach that believes in them, but somehow they're making it work. I think Auburn can kind of I think they have to be feeling the desperation a little bit. If you can't win on the road at Ole Miss, how can we trust you to win, in Gainesville or in Tuscaloosa, some of those games I listed off, or win in the NCAA tournament, frankly?
Yeah, I think Auburn.
If I didn't say that, by the way, that's who I think is going to win.
Sure.
And frankly, I've been backing Auburn a lot. I wish they would make me look smart every now and then.
Yeah, I'm going with Auburn too against my better judgment. Quinn, this is it. This is the last benefit of the doubt that we give your boys here, man. But yeah, they've got to go pick one off on the road here. I'm still on the fence with Stephen Pearl, by the way.
Sure.
Because there's been a very up and down type of year for him, and I understand the expectations weren't, what they were with last year's team. It's a brand new roster, so like there's some leeway there, but very much a roller coaster. So we'll see which direction they're headed here. This is an interesting game, I think. Georgia at Missouri. Well, we could go. I could start. Georgia feels like they feel like a very good home team and not so good on the road. Missouri feels like a very good home team and not so good on the road. And the game is at Missouri. Okay. So Arkansas, they go to Auburn in a desperation game, and Auburn plays their best game of the season. Then they turn around and go to Missouri, and they get their butts kicked. And then Missouri goes and loses at LSU. Georgia, in a desperation game, just had their best performance of the season against Arkansas. And I think they're going to go to Missouri, and they're going to get their butts kicked. And then whoever Missouri plays on Saturday is going to beat them. That's what I think is going to happen here. I'm taking Missouri to win the game at home.
I should have went first, Curtis, because not only do I feel the same way, I feel the same way for all of the exact same reasons you just listed off, down to the bit about Auburn doing the same thing last week. Like, It feels very similar to me. I as a gambler, Curtis, I've learned this little thing. I remember back in the day, I read a stat in NFL games that it's like if there's an NFL game and one team covered the spread the week before and the other team they're playing did not cover the spread, it flips at like an 84% clip. Like, it is just that simple in sports sometimes, where if you're coming off a good performance, you let up a little bit. If you're coming off a bad performance, you're a little bit more motivated. When you take into account the home road split on top of it, when you take into account that Missouri, by the way, is needing to be pretty desperate as well, because they're currently in the tournament picture. They lose a home game right here to Georgia. All of a sudden, we will all start dismissing Missouri. They will be right back to, hey, they're probably not going to make the tournament. And now all of a sudden, they've got some issues with Dennis Gates. They have to have a discussion there. I think they have to be feeling a little bit of that desperation. And Georgia, I think they're good. I don't think they're just, they're not a consistent, they're just going to show up and play their B+ game every game. I think they're really good in the right context. I think this game in Como is a dangerous one. I'll even say this. I was impressed with Georgia when they won at South Carolina. I think I texted you about it, and I was like, that's not a good game. It's not a good performance, but I'm impressed that they were able to dig deep and find a way to win that one. I will be very impressed with Georgia if they dig deep, find a way to win on the road at Missouri, who's not a good team, but this is just a very easy banana peel to slip on.
Yeah, for sure. Texas going to Rupp Arena to play Kentucky. You can take this one first. I think this is another pretty fascinating game, honestly.
Yeah, it is, because I think Texas, there's just an unpredictability with them. Like, you just don't really know what to expect. I think Kentucky wins this one. I don't feel great about it, though. And I think Rupp has weirdly, of course, it's one of the better venues in college basketball, one of the biggest crowds you'll ever see. The seats will be filled. I think Kentucky has a weird thing going on at home where it almost works against them, their home court advantage. They were getting boo birds. They played Mississippi State, I guess it was last Saturday. They were getting boo birds in the first half of a game that they wound up winning by 25.
Yeah.
It's just a weird little dynamic where I still think that, you still favor the home team. It's still, I'd feel better about them, in this game than I would if this were in Austin. But I don't think Kentucky's home court advantage is the same as it maybe used to be in years past. There's an intensity to that crowd. If they start hanging around with Texas, and I know they're coming off a few wins, but if they're losing at halftime to Texas, it's going to get weird in that crowd. I think that could play against Kentucky, but I think they probably take care of business still. I'm going to pick them.
I'm going to take Kentucky also to win this game at home. I don't think Texas is going to be the team to do this. I guess I wouldn't be entirely surprised, but at some point, and I listened to Mark Pope after that win against Tennessee, and he was talking about, because they keep getting down double digits, early in all these games. And he was talking about how comfortable the locker room was at halftime. Where they're kind of, it's almost like they've accepted this as their identity of, we're just, we get down big, but we know in the second half we're going to flip the switch and be right back in the thick of things. Well, there's going to come a time where that just doesn't happen. Like you get down, or you're behind at halftime or whatever, and you just assume like, all right, we're going to go into automatic mode here in the second half, and then you just don't. Or the other team, doesn't feel the game pressure or whatever. That's going to catch them here at some point. I just don't think it's going to be against Texas. I bet this is going to be a close one. We'll see what Tremont Mark can do on the road here. But yeah, I'll take Kentucky to win this one. And then Mississippi State at Texas A&M. A&M's coming off that road swing here. I got to be honest with you. I think they're going to get Hubbarded.
God dang it, dude. Kurt, are you serious right now?
Yeah.
I was fully prepared to say, because we talk a lot about WTF games of, games that just we look at and we're like, how the hell did that happen? I'm actually, now that you're going that way, I'm going to pick A&M.
Okay.
But I do think this game has some one, because A&M's just not super talented. Mm-hmm. So it's like any given game, they're going to be in a close game most of the time.
Yeah.
I think Hubbard is, of course, he's the type of guy that will, shoot 37% from the floor, but will also hit a huge three when you least expect it, will get fouled late in the game, knock down his free throws. I think this is a very dangerous one. Full disclosure, I will be betting against A&M in all of their remaining home games. Simply for, I just think that, one, they're not that talented, but also, I don't think they have a great home court advantage. I think it makes too much sense. I just don't think A&M is just going to waltz through their SEC schedule and have the expected results happen every time. I'll go ahead and officially pick them to win this game because you're going the opposite direction. But I love that we're on the same page here for this one.
It's just, I think about Buckyball, and part of the reason I think why Texas A&M has had some of the success they have is because it's a unique style. Tennessee struggled with it because that's just the antithesis of how Tennessee wants to play basketball. Mississippi State, they've been offensively challenged this year, but if I'm Josh Hubbard, I'm like, wait, they're going to try to press me and send a trap at me, so I just get to hoop. I just get to dribble between this double team, and I can jack up all the shots that I want to. This has got 35 on 27 shots written all over it for Hubbard, and they get just enough stops. I think they're going to go in there and pop them, man. But at any rate, we made it through all the games for the midweek here, and appreciate everybody for hanging out with us. Again, this is a pre-recorded episode. 99% of the time we'll be going live for it, but with some family in town and the college football playoff championship game that I want to watch, and we know a lot of folks want to watch, we pre-recorded for this one, but we'll see how the midweeks go, and if I can fit it in, maybe I'll throw a little live in there on Thursday or something. But any final thoughts, Andrew, before we get out of here and get ready for another, I'm sure going to be a very entertaining week of SEC basketball?
No real final thoughts other than thanks for everybody that continues to tune into the show. This is awesome that we get to do this, and that people tune in. They just want to know, whether you're a Hog fan that just wants to know about your opponents, whether you're an opposing fan base that just wants to hear some good basketball dialogue. We appreciate you nonetheless for hanging out with us. Shout out to our guy Kingsley, who I've been seeing him say this in the chat. It's Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So, of course, MLK, we appreciate that. We respect that. Just go find it. He's been saying it. Just go find a MLK speech clip or something. Just watch it, and obviously we've seen a lot of the great, I Have a Dream and all that. But of course, on a day like today, got to give a shout out and got to respect the life and legacy of Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah, no doubt about it. That's some sound advice there from our man Kingsley, and we certainly appreciate him. All right, well, that'll do it for today's episode of Inside SEC Basketball Live. Hope everybody has a good rest of your week. Enjoy the games, and yeah, we'll see where it takes us, and we'll see you guys next time.